McCain. Now, joining us from Oklahoma is Republican U.S. Representative Tom Cole. This is from a home state down there. He's taking a little time away from his break, and I really appreciate it, Representative. Good to have you here.
Happy to be with you, David.
So I want to talk to you about tax reform. I want to talk to you about the budget, but first let's talk about North Korea. Actually, Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader, has come out and said that, quote, since President Trump took office, North Korea has accelerated its nuclear program to unprecedented levels. The president's most recent comments are recklessly belligerent and demonstrate a grave lack of appreciation for the severity of the North Korean nuclear situation. Congressman, what is your reaction as one of the leaders in Washington? This is a really big problem in North Korea. Everybody knows it's a problem. What can we do about it?
Well, first of all, I couldn't disagree more with Leader Pelosi. Quite frankly, this is a regime that's very opaque to the United States and the rest of the world. And I think the president just wanted to make it crystal clear what the consequences of reckless action might be. And I think he also probably intended this message for China, for them to understand how serious this was and for them to remain cooperative with us, which, you know, to his credit, he's been able to get the Chinese to exert more pressure and interest here than any previous administration. So I think there's a little bit of hyperventilating in Washington, D.C., not surprising. But I think the president, frankly, again, wanted them to understand the consequences, wanted the Chinese to understand the urgency of acting, and I think he succeeded.
Just one last question on this subject, North Korea, Congressman. To what extent does the White House consult with leadership in Congress when these things happen so that we make sure that all of our government at least is on the same page?
Quite well, you know, frankly. This isn't a surprise if you sit on Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, as I do. Look, we were warned earlier this year that the North Koreans would achieve this capability within the term, if not, you know, obviously, you know, immediately. So they've kept us well informed all along the way. And again, I think the president means to be blunt here. I don't think this is accident or a misstatement because, again, this has been pretty provocative. And to think that this has just happened since he's been president, again, that suggests anybody who says that, Leader Pelosi did, sort of has historical amnesia. This has been a pretty reckless regime for a long time under successive presidents of both parties.
So, Congressman, now let's turn to what you're going to have to face when you get back to Washington after the recess. And that is we've got an issue of the debt ceiling, we've got a budget issue, and we've got tax reform. What is going to be #1 on your agenda as you return to Washington in September?
Well, I think the most important thing immediately is to get a budget done. And by the way, we've passed that out of the Budget Committee with every Republican vote. So I think we've solved most of the issues there, but you can't get tax reform until you get the budget. So that needs to happen. The appropriations process is well underway. All 12 bills are out of subcommittee and or out of committee, frankly, 4 of them across the floor. So we ought to finish that, and then we'll probably do a short continuing resolution and negotiate with the Senate during October and November. And then finally, of course, the debt ceiling, which needs to get done this month. That's going to be trickier. I think it will get done. It always does get done. But you know, this administration, like every administration, Democrat or Republican, wants a clean debt ceiling. Congress, particularly the Republicans in Congress, want some sign that you're going to do something to change the trajectory of the debt and spending. So there'll be a discussion about that. But in the end, I think you'll get a bipartisan agreement that will raise the debt ceiling before September 30th.
And finally, Congressman Cole, I must say, I think probably what's most of interest to our audience here on Bloomberg is tax reform. And is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? We had Gary Cohn from the White House on last week. He remains really committed to getting tax reform done, passed, this calendar year. Do you think that will happen?
I do, actually, and strangely enough, I think partly the failure on health care, which I regret deeply, will help tax reform. I think most Republicans know politically they've got to get this done. So I think we know the broad outlines of what the White House and the major leadership on the tax writing committees in Congress are talking about. I think what's not clear what the pay for is going to be. Because if you move under reconciliation, it's got to be deficit neutral. In the past, they were talking about border adjustment tax. We know that's out the window now. And they wanted to use savings from health care, and that hasn't happened. So to me, when we release a bill in September, and that's what the Speaker's pledged he'll do, the real question will be, how are you going to pay for it?
Okay, thank you so much. That's Republican Congressman Tom Cole today coming to us from Oklahoma. And we'll be right back with Bloomberg live from New York.